With us now, editor-in-chief of U.S. News and World Report and chairman and co-publisher of the New York Daily News, Mort Zuckerman. Also, political correspondent for Rolling Stone magazine and author of RollingStone.com's political blog, National Affairs Daily, Tim Dickinson. In the October 1st issue, he explores how the rage over health care reform got started. He says this, quote, far from representing a spontaneous upwelling of populist rage, the protests were tightly orchestrated from the top down by corporate-funded front groups as well as top lobbyists for the health care industry. Call it the return of Karl Rove's playbook. The effort to mobilize the angriest fringe on the Republican base was guided by a conservative dream team. Tim, is that true? Explain. Okay, maybe not. There we go.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead. No, your mic wasn't working, so start again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I said let's name names. We had Dick Armey's Freedom Works. We had Tim Phillips' Americans for Prosperity. We had Rick Scott's Conservatives for Patients' Rights. And he was aided by the PR firm that helped swift-boat John Kerry. And so these people were working in conjunction with an ostensibly...
But these people in these screaming things, and they were orchestrated and hired and working for someone? Are you saying?
No, I'm saying that this was an effort that was directed by these groups at the top. They worked through a subordinate of Freedom Works called the Tea Party Patriots. I got access to the Tea Party Patriots listserv, and they put out calls to activists to go to, for instance, the town hall rally with Kathleen Sebelius and our own inspector that turned into quite a riot. And then there's an aftermath email that says, you know, great work, keep up the action. They distributed a memo that talked about how to rock the town halls. That described how 30 or 40 people could easily take over a town hall and appear to be a much larger presence than they actually
Interesting.
were.
Lawrence O'Donnell is here.
Tim, what difference should it make to us in the way we read these events, whether these protests were spontaneous or organized in the way that you described?
I mean, it should make all the difference in the world. The question is whether people are coming to these things spontaneously or whether they're being directed by groups that take money from the largest health insurers and oil firms.
And so basically what you're saying is these guys in baseball hats who look like truck drivers are actually functioning by extension as high-priced lobbyists. I mean, voluntarily, not getting money for it necessarily, but being activated through that mechanism, and therefore there's this kind of there's this lie being told to the American public that there's a grassroots uprising.
And you need to start with the lie being told back in May, which is that the Democrats' plan, whatever it was going to be a Washington takeover of health care, which was Frank Luntz, who's the pollster who worked on the Contract for America with Newt Gingrich, working backward from polling. And he said, what's the scariest thing that we can tell people this is? Whatever plan it's going to be, what's the scariest thing we can tell them it is? And it's a Washington takeover of health care. And what's the scariest component of that mythical Washington takeover? Well, it's that that government bureaucrats are going to stand in the way of you and your doctor making the best decisions about your health. And then you have Betsy McCoy taking that and spinning it to this wild death panel's conclusion by saying that government bureaucrats are going to sit there and tell your grandmother when to die.
Pat Buchanan. Buchanan.
You know, look, excuse me, but I find this non-credible. You had thousands of people, tens of thousands of people at it, hundreds of town halls. The idea that Dick Armey can organize something like that from D.C. or a bunch of lobbyists that can't organize anything outside of K Street can be organizing these things all over the country when they couldn't do it for John McCain's campaign at all. It sounds to me just non-credible that it all had to be organized by a few people.
Well, I mean, they're working from a playbook that was pioneered by Philip Morris in the 90s to defeat the Clinton health care plan. And you had Philip Morris was paying Conservatives for a Sound Economy $400,000 to gin up town hall opposition to the Clinton plan because it was going to be funded by tobacco taxes. And who is Citizens for a Sound Economy now? Citizens for a Sound Economy now split in 2003 to become Freedom Works and Americans for Prosperity.
Are you sure the liberal left didn't create the playbook, actually? I mean, this is exactly what's happening on the other side. Grassroots organizations. I mean, who's directing MoveOn.org?
Well, it's not Washington lobbyists who are directing MoveOn.org. It's a completely different operation.
But with or without these people, don't you think there was a fundamental unease about the way this health care program was being promoted? Don't you think there was a fundamental concern, amongst other things, not just of the role of government, but of the cost of government at a time when the whole country was worried about debt, their own debt, and the debt of the country? I mean, there was a deeper issue here that everybody seems to have tapped into. It surely could not all have been organized the way you're talking about.
No, I'm saying that the conditions for organizing this are right because of that very fear. And clearly the Obama administration lost control of the message here. But when you have experienced people, I mean, the Republicans may be out of power as a party, but they're operatives, the same people who, led us into the Iraq war on false information, are still out there. These people didn't go away. And so they have a lot of mature and powerful assets that the Republican parties and their corporate allies can deploy. Yeah, I'm listening.
But listen, a congressman or a senator, when he goes home to his district, or any candidate goes out there, you know when there are a bunch of ringers in the hall and you know who they are and you don't pay any attention to them. What has happened here is that the conservative and moderate wing of the Democratic Party has defected en masse almost from the public health option and from other parts of these bills, because they have come back from meetings in their home districts realizing that in their home districts this bill has no popularity. It is 51 to 39 against nationally. You go to these conservative districts, it's probably 2 to 1. Karl Rove can't do this.
And Jim DeMint was on a phone call with Rick Scott of Conservatives for Patients' Rights and the activists of Tea Party Patriots, talking about how they were going to make health care Obama's Waterloo. And how were they going to do that? They were going to deploy people at town halls and make representatives scared to come back and vote against the people in September. And that's exactly what we saw play out. So this is something that also reaches into the highest levels of the Republican Party, including Chairman
I just want to say one thing. Why does this remind me of the 92-year-old man who was sued in a paternity suit, and he said he was so proud he pleaded guilty? I mean, there really is a lot more here than what these people could possibly have accounted for. And I'm not saying that there wasn't an organized group, but the fundamental unease with this program is what has turned it around, not just what these people have done. They played a role in it without question.
What happens when you have the majority leader of the Republican Party, John Boehner, saying that this plan is going to lead towards government-sponsored euthanasia? You had the top politicians in the party lying to the American people from May onward about this plan. So, of course, people are upset.
Tim, did they give any consideration to not lying about the plan? Did they give any consideration to the strategic approach of actually going into the town meetings and talking about what's in the plan and saying, isn't it really too risky to be adding to the cost of hiring a new employee in a recession, for example? I mean, there's a long list of Republican arguments against this bill on the substance of what's actually in the bill. And that, by the way, is what they did in 1994. They went after the substance of the bill day in and day out, and that's how they took it down. And so I'm just wondering if when they were planning this attack, did any of them suggest attacking things that are actually in the legislation?
Well, so if you go back and read Frank Luntz's memo, that there's nothing about the substance in it. It's
yeah,
about
that's Frank Luntz for you.
I'm sort of uncomfortable with this just being a right thing.
But look, this is 1992, 93. Remember the Perot rallies and all these things? They were spontaneous. I'm sure Perot's guys organized them once they came out. These came up from the grassroots. You had the largest uprising this summer I can think of since the Perot movement. I don't doubt people tried to organize it, benefit from it, send in people, but this was genuine and authentic, and that's why it worked.
I think there's a little of everyone's right in here, gotta tell you. Tim, tough guy, thank you for putting up with the rapid fire here, the machine gun interview.
My pleasure.
Come back soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.